Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I'm off heavy-duty painkillers, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink, I have in sample form. It's Sheaffer Skrip Brown, which I believe, I have this memory of the other ink reviewer, Michael Madison, describing it as one of the worst inks he's ever used. I don't know if it's that bad, but yeah, let's take a look, shall we? The two pens I used were this Sheaffer School Pen, which even though it says fine, it usually writes more like a medium, and with certain inks it can actually write fairly wet. And also this Sheaffer 100, which actually only comes in one size, and it's a medium. But mine is actually a fairly small medium. It's almost more like an actual fine. So these two together, rather amusing. But yeah, I thought I'd compare it to a few other browns. So here's Sheaffer Skrip Brown. I tried to find some other browns like it. The thing is, there's something about this brown, it's such a simple brown that it's, I don't know, it's hard to replicate. So, yeah. Oh, sorry, knocked the camera. So here's actually an exclusive and I think discontinued ink. This was made for the Fountain Pen Network by Noodlers, and it's Galileo Manuscript Brown. However, I think this one's Eternal or something, so. And then Ackerman 18, which I've been told Rude is actually sounds more like road, so maybe it's Garuda Road. Oh, I just massacred that even more, I'm sure. But, yeah, so the chromatography was really weird. Yeah, so this is a very simple brown, and it doesn't have a ton of saturation, which you can actually kind of see in the chromatography. It's almost hard to tell where the initial drop was put. There's almost like this brick reddish brown. But then there's this weird, vibrant green right up at the top. I mean, it's almost like neon. It's brighter than, you know, like fresh baby green, so yeah, but here I let it dry, which is not how you're supposed to do it. And, I mean, the dot got darker, but pretty much everything else is the same. It seemed like it was just slightly fighting going up the page a little bit more, so. Alright, paper test. Top down in density, Clairefontaine, 90 grams per square meter. Can you try and hold this still? Yeah, so I had it in the 100 first. I had sort of been playing around with it, and then I was like, oh, I should use another pen. So it was a little more aged in this one. And what's weird is you can kind of tell at the beginning, it got a little bit darker, but then over time they got to be pretty much the same. So yeah, the 100 took 7.5 seconds to dry. The School Pen just took 7. And it was perfectly alright in that there was no bleed, no feather, no spread, no echo, no sheen. But it was just a very unimpressive brown. It was kind of like, okay, brown. It reminded me of those watercolors that we used to give, you know, kids when I would work at summer camp. Like, they're just going to make a mess with it, so let's just make sure it washes out easily. It reminded me of that brown. Is it brown? Yes. Is it very accurately brown? Yes. Is it eye-catchingly brown? Definitely not. And, yeah, water test made a bit of a mess. Really, really washed away. In fact, the camera is picking up this much more than my naked eye can. And then it actually, a little puddle of water slipped under the page, so. Next up is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter, where the dry times were the same. Here you do get a bit of shading, but I wouldn't call it complementary shading. It kind of just sort of draws the eye to how sort of undersaturated it is. It's a very simple brown. You know, if you don't want something that's like really, you know, like a rich hazelnutty brown, you don't want, you know, like a chestnutty brown, you just want something that's like, if someone looks at it and like, that's brown, this ink is good for that. The flow, I would not call it wet, even remotely, but it, you know, the flow was just fine. Yeah, no bleed, no feather, no spread. Very well behaved in that regard. No echo, no sheen. no water resistance whatsoever. Again, the camera's making that a little more obvious than the naked eye can. It's really, really gone. Next up is Tomoe River, which tends to really bring out shading and tends to draw out dry times. And I don't know, maybe it's the cream quality of this paper, but it kind of brought out something in the color of this ink that I enjoyed. I enjoyed the color a lot more on this paper than I did on any of the others. But it did draw out the dry times a little bit. The Sheaffer 100 took 13 seconds. The School Pen took 11. You do get some... Yeah, I like this color. It's better on here, but in my opinion. But yeah, you do get shading. There's no sheen. You do get a mild halo effect, which is kind of pretty. As you would expect on Tomoe River. There's no bleed, no feather, no spread. I mean, again, it always depends on how sensitive you are. There I was trying to really rub it in to get more shading. So it's very dense there. But yeah, I consider myself to be very picky. This would not bother me. But Tomoe River loves to let ink slide away when you add more water, and that is most definitely what happened here. It's very, very gone. So, yeah. Water resistance is not this ink's strong suit. And here's the world's worst 20-pound copier paper, where again, I used both pens. So, like, this half is the 100 and this half is the School Pen. But you can barely tell the difference here. The 100 took 1.5 seconds to dry. The School Pen took half a second to dry. But yeah, I expected a lot worse. You know, I mean, there is some spread. You will see spread. But it's not as bad as I was anticipating. There is some feathering. That is not good. But it's not that big, distracting, like, cactus sticker feathers. You know, it's not quite as bad. Considering this is the world's worst copier paper, I was expecting bleed through everywhere. There is some extreme show through, but not really a lot of... Okay, maybe there. Why? Oh, no. Yeah, this paper hates water. You can actually see where the paper, like, tried to distort itself. Yeah, it feathered, it exploded, it's a mess. I don't know if I could say that's recoverable. Next is Mead Notebook Paper, where I only used the medium Sheaffer 100, because it seemed to be a little bit more, it didn't put down as much ink, so I thought it would be a little more fair. It took 1 second to dry. It's outperforming the 20-pound paper. There's even the same pen doesn't have quite as much spread. I don't know if I would call these feathers, really. It's more like an extreme woolliness. So there's that. So there's significant echo, which is true. Now this paper is physically thinner than the 20-pound paper, but yeah, I mean, honestly, considering this is Mead, that's not too bad. But yeah, this paper really hates water. So ink plus water plus paper equals very bad. It really dyed the page. It feathered, it exploded. That would be a nightmare to try and recover. Last is Moleskine Notebook Paper, where unlike how, you know, the creaminess of the Tomoe River sort of made me like the ink more, here, I don't know if this will come through, but it almost has like a greenness to it. I don't know what's going on there with that. But again, I only used the Sheaffer 100 in medium. It took 5 seconds to dry, which I cannot explain. And I just want you to look at the word feathering. You see that? Those huge feathers. But what's weird is you get shading. There's shading on here. I have no explanation whatsoever. There is a bit of spread. It's somewhere between the copier paper and which spread a good deal, and the Mead paper, which barely spread at all. The water test turned that dark, or you know, that like brick red. I can't explain that. It feathered and exploded. I wrote that and I would barely know what it said. There wasn't as much bleed as I was expecting, but I don't know if the brightness of the light will let this come through, but there is very extreme show through all throughout. So yeah, anyways, there you go. There's Sheaffer Skrip Brown. I would not call it one of the worst inks I've ever used, but especially the past couple weeks, I've been reviewing some inks that have really annoyed the heck out of me. But there's nothing exceptional about this ink, but that does not mean it is not a perfectly good ink. Yeah, so for your consideration from the Triple N Network, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching. Bye.